In today's episode, we look at making compost tea, which is an organic nutrient supplement for your plants. Now let's look at what you need to prepare compost tea. You will need a bucket, a 5-gallon bucket. You will need an air pump. You will need a small piece of 1/4-inch tubing, a small piece of soaker hose, and some weights. You will need some compost. You can either use bagged compost or you can use your own homemade compost. You will need fish fertilizer, seaweed, as well as molasses, which you can find at any grocery store. Our first step in the brewing process is to make sure that our water is free of chlorine. Now, a lot of household tap water contains chlorine, which is bad for beneficial bacteria. So this is how you get rid of the chlorine. And this is done by using the air pump that we saw. We've connected the air pump outlets to this barb T, which in turn connects to this 1/4-inch tubing and then into a soaker hose. And the weight is used to keep the soaker hose down. Now the reason of using a soaker hose is that it produces a lot of these air bubbles that add a lot of oxygen into the water. Our next step is to use compost. I'm using a bagged compost here, but you can use your own compost as well. And we just need a handful of compost, as you can see here. You do not need to overdo it. This is the fish fertilizer, seaweed, which will add the nutrients to the soil. And there's also molasses, which will be food for the bacteria as the compost tea brews. Now we're going to add our ingredients to our compost tea, which has been brewing for about an hour or so to get rid of the chlorine in the water. And what we do is we add the compost. Now remember that the whole idea of making compost tea is to add a lot of beneficial bacteria in the tea. We're going to add some fish fertilizer and seaweed, which will not only add nutrients but also feed the bacteria in the soil or in the compost tea. And this is the seaweed. You just need to add about a capful or a tablespoon of each. Don't need to overdo it. And then we add molasses, which can be found in any grocery store. And what the bacteria do is they feed on the molasses and then they keep multiplying. And they keep multiplying to an extent where there are just so many beneficial bacteria that your compost tea becomes very nutritious. And that's the whole idea of brewing your compost tea. And what the air pump does is that it adds a lot of oxygen in the water. We now stirred everything together very well with a stick. And by adding all that oxygen in the compost tea, what happens is that we feed the aerobic bacteria, which is the beneficial bacteria in this compost tea, and which multiplies and becomes large in number. And it also feeds on the molasses that we added in the compost tea. And once again, here's how the air pump is connected to the soaker hose via these barbed T's. Basically the two tubes connected via the barbed T to the 1/4-inch tubing and then back into the soaker hose, which creates all these air bubbles. And now all we need to do is let this tea brew for anywhere between 24 to 72 hours. And I will show you how the tea looks like at each stage. So after 24 hours, you can see that the bacteria in the compost tea has begun to multiply. You can see that with all the froth around the surface. And after 48 hours, it just increases. You can see how the tea looks like in 48 hours. Now at 48 hours, the tea is actually usable. But if you want more beneficial bacteria, just let it keep brewing. And you can see that 72 hours later, you can see a lot more of that froth, which is when you take out your tubing, you turn the air pump off, and you're ready to use your compost tea. So to use it, all you do is just put it on the base of any plant. It will be absorbed by the roots. You can also foliar apply the compost tea as I'm doing here. I'm not using a pump here, but You get the idea. Now compost tea is also very good for seedlings. Because seedlings don't need a strong fertilizer, compost tea works very well. And because compost tea is so natural, organic, and doesn't contain any salts that would harm your plants, you can use it in containers, you can use it for fruit trees. And remember that by adding compost tea, you are adding a gazillion bacteria into your soil, and what this bacteria does is it lets your plants absorb all the nutrients from the soil very efficiently. So what you're going to see is very healthy plants that not only look very healthy, they taste very good as well and show a very nice, good overall vigor when they're growing. And if you have not tried making your compost tea before, I highly recommend that you try out this technique. You will be pleasantly surprised. So there we have it. That was our episode on making your own compost tea. This was one of the most requested videos that my viewers wanted me to make. So I hope you liked this video. If you like the techniques, do give us a thumbs up. We always like to listen to your comments. And I'll see you again soon. Happy gardening.